Hello Reddit, I need some advice. My name is Chloe. My husband and I bought this new house that's really close to the shore almost 2 weeks ago. We already finished unpacking everything, but we're still getting used to it all. So what you need to know is that our house is one of these single level ones, and in the back there's a patio which opens up into a small forest in the front but also offers you a view of the ocean when you look into the side. There's a large glass door that separates the porch from the living room, but we didn't get around to fixing the blinds or hanging up curtains yet. Trust me, this will be important later. Anyways, the first weird incident happened during the second or third night we spent in our new home. Ethan, that's my husband, and I are complete sports freaks. I'm talking all kinds of stuff, baseball, rugby, tennis, anything, and we watch games and all matches almost every day, no matter if they're live or recorded. So there'd be a rerun of a really old game of soccer that day, and we just had to see it. So the first thing we do is set up the TV in the living room, because priorities, I guess. We place the television and our couch kind of parallel to the exit that leads onto the porch, and we sat down to watch. Ethan chose the seat closest to the door. I sort of cuddled up to him, but I was lying down, so I had my head in his lap. Therefore, I couldn't turn to look outside. I could only see the TV. After a while, though, I noticed Ethan began to stir. While I looked up, I saw he was staring out into the patio with a slightly worried expression. I asked him what was wrong, but he just grumbled in response. That's the thing he does when he's too focused on something else. I shrugged it off and laid back down. But he simply kept gazing out into the darkness, so eventually I told him no one could see us. I guess I just assumed he was concerned someone outside was watching us through the glass door. Granted, there was no curtains and the TV was bright enough, but our house is situated in a way that doesn't allow neighbors to simply stare in from their windows. Our backyard is also not openly accessible since we have a fence and a lockable gate, so there couldn't be any strangers walking by either. Once I'd asked him this, he finally turned to me and said he was sure he'd seen something creep by outside. Like an animal? I asked him. He nodded and I sat up to see what he was talking about. Sure enough, after a while I spotted something moving in the darkness outside. I couldn't see what it was, but to be honest, I didn't really care either. I simply reminded Ethan that we were living next to the woods now, so of course there'd be some critters around. This really didn't seem to calm him down though. He stayed nervous like that until we gave up on the game and decided to go to sleep. The next night we were watching TV that late. It was a week or so later, and again, Ethan perked up when he saw movement outside. This time I was actually getting a bit uneasy as well. Maybe it was just the way of rubbing off on me. I don't know. Anyways, it's the night that we decided on getting one of these motion detector cameras that you could see when someone stops by outside. We purchased one the next day and set it above our back door, the one that we kept seeing this thing run in front of. We also got a light that would come on whenever something would start moving around outside. We don't keep our phones in the same room we sleep in, and when we get out of bed that night, we kind of forgot about the whole ordeal, so we didn't really take them with us either. We woke up due to the sound of glass shattering that night. Both my husband and I are very light sleepers, so we were immediately on high alert. The noise had come from somewhere in the front of the house. The living room, or so we thought. We don't own any guns, but Ethan always keeps his baseball bat by his bedside. He'd tell you it's for self-defense, but he used to play baseball all throughout his teenage to young adult years, and I think he loves the old bat more than me. It still came in pretty handy though. He grabbed the bat and walked up to the bedroom door, ready to confront whoever was outside. But I quickly staggered after him to hold him back. "Don't go out there," I whispered, firmly gripping his arm. "You want them to steal our stuff," he replied in a low voice. "No, but what if they're armed? Your bat won't help you against some lunatic with a gun," I hissed. He made an attempt to gently shake me off, but I clung to his side and he ended up hurriedly locking the door before we sat down on the edge of our bed again. My whole body was shaking at this point. I knew neither of us had ever experienced a home invasion or a break-in before, but I admittedly wasn't taking it too well. I had to keep my hands over my mouth to stifle my sobs, and if it hadn't been for Ethan quietly uttering reassuring words of comfort and rubbing my back, I would have probably lost my mind for fear then and there. So we sat, me in his arms, listening to someone stomping and thrashing around outside as we desperately tried to stay silent. The sounds of glass breaking and wood splintering followed. Ethan still had his bat at the ready when he suddenly lowered his lips to my ear and whispered, "The steps sound weird to you too?" I raised my head a bit and focused, only to find out that he was right. Something about the way the intruder was walking sounded off. The footfalls came irregularly and sounded much shorter and quicker, yet at the same time heavier than a normal person. It was more of a scuttling than walking. The only way I can describe it is of a way a young child would run around, less steady and a little uncontrolled. And then, all of a sudden, a loud bang shook the bedroom door from the outside. Both Ethan and I winced when we heard it. The sound was followed by more bangs, like someone was pounding on the door with all their might as if they were trying to get it to break down. I didn't notice it right away, but after a few seconds of this, I realized that the noises didn't come from above. It's hard to explain, but when a grown person knocks on a door, you wouldn't perceive the sound to come from as far down as this one did. Finally, after what must have been 2 entire minutes, the banging subsided and we could hear those same thumping, irregular footsteps making their way back into the living room and eventually faded completely. Ethan and I sat on our bed for another 30 minutes before we even dared to get up again. I hesitantly unlocked the door and we stepped outside. The hallway was a mess. There had been some leftover boxes which we'd left neatly stacked atop one another, but now they were laying scattered all over the floor. Some of them had been holding some plates and other breakable kitchenware, which we also found on the ground smashed to pieces. The little dresser that had been standing up against the wall had been bashed in as well. We stayed close to each other's sides as we checked the other rooms for the intruder. After all, who knew if the stranger had actually left the house or was just trying to lure us out of the safety of our bedroom? Once we were sure there was no one else around, we ran for our phones and called the police. During the time we spent waiting for them to arrive, Ethan remembered the door cam. Obviously, it had picked up on the intruder. In hindsight, we should have really kept our phones around. Anyways, we pulled up the video it had taken, and that's when things took a turn for the worst. By the time the feed started, the light was already on. It illuminated the part of the patio, but whatever was moving around was still in the shadows. So for a few seconds, all we could see was scuttling around in the darkness. When it finally stepped out of the light, Ethan almost dropped his phone. It was a distinctively humanoid-looking creature, except that it was way too short. I'd say it was roughly the height of an average-sized dog. It was wearing a dark brown or black cloak with the hood up, obscuring his face. It seemed to stare up at the camera for a few minutes before suddenly jumping up. For a split second, I thought I could make out bits of its face. I was sure it had a beard or something like that. However, we didn't see anything else since that's where the feed cut off. When we went to check outside, we found that the camera had been destroyed. Its sad remains were lying down on the ground below. Also, the small living room window had been smashed in, which is probably how the creature got inside after taking out our camera. The police arrived sometime later. They took our statements and we showed them the video, but there wasn't a lot they could do. To be honest, I don't blame them. Whatever tried to attack us that night was definitely not human. None of our valuables had been stolen, and since the only thing the intruder did was trash our furniture and try to get us ourselves, their only possible motivation must have been to harm us. Their physical strength is also rather alarming, and that combined with their ability to jump as high as they did has us rather certain that they won't go down easy in a fight against 2 scared people with a shared baseball bat. With all that in mind, it's also likely that this thing will be trying its luck again sometime soon. We have therefore decided to look for other solutions. This brings us to the actual question for you guys. Anyone know how to deal with territorial dwarfs?